I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. And this is the I Hate Politics candidate interviews with Marc Elrich from Montgomery County Executive. I'm Sunil Dasgupta, host of I Hate Politics. If you are new to the show, I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse, democratic, and sometimes divided societies. As part of the show, we have conversations with local, state, and sometimes federal candidates. Rather than ask them how they stand on a multitude of issues, these conversations try to get to the character of the candidate. The Montgomery County Executive race is one of the most closely watched and contested elections in the 2022 primaries. While every election is advertised as being critical and life-changing, many believe that this is Montgomery County's last chance to get it right, especially on business development and jobs. 4 years ago, in 2018, incumbent Marc Elrich defeated David Blair, a local businessman, by 77 votes. Blair is back this year together with his personal fortune, which he has used to outspend Elrich and a third candidate, Councilmember Marc Riemer, who has also amassed $1 million war chest using public financing. Marc Elrich is a veteran of decades of political skirmishing, especially in downtown County Montgomery. Prior to becoming county executive, he sat on the county council for 12 years, and so he has held elected office for over 15 years. Music for this episode comes from Emily Hall, a DC singer-songwriter who grew up in Wheaton. You can find her on Instagram at Songs by Emily Hall.
All the hatred and anger that leads us astray. Oh, I still believe in love today. No war that is fought can never be won. So lay down your weapons and throw out your guns. And don't be confused between what's black or white. Compassion's most powerful when we unite. 'Cause I believe in love, sweet love. May the power of people rise above all the hatred and anger that leads us astray. Oh, I still believe in love today. All that is poison.
Marc Elrich, welcome to I Hate Politics.
Greetings, and thank you for having me on here.
What do you think is the central issue in the county executive race in the primary of 2022?
I mean, that's a really, I don't think it dissolves to a central issue. I mean, maybe at some level it does. I think that among some circles, the issue they've tried to make is this about housing and jobs? Now, of course, most people in Montgomery County have jobs, and most people in Montgomery have housing, and so it doesn't quite always rise to the same level, but there are real concerns about that. And I think there's an issue more than jobs, is basically, so what is Montgomery County's economic future like? Are we destined to become a bedroom community, which I don't think is a good path, and I'm afraid that's a path we're on? Or are we going to be able to, perform economically and do some of the things that we want to do and offer higher quality jobs? And we can talk about, where all that's gone over the last decade or so.
Let's start with the economic development piece. And what is the future of Montgomery County? When you say that we are on the path to a bedroom community, the truth is that we have always been a bedroom community. How do you get away from being a bedroom community?
I mean, I think our zoning has been really problematic, and I think it's been a problem for more than a decade. And so I take great delight in a way, the criticism from Blair and Hans in particular, because when I was on the council, then you were an observer of all these things. I would vote against a number of these master plans. And people would say, well, you're against jobs and housing. And I was like, you're not going to get any jobs or housing. You're not asking the fundamental questions, and this is not going to work. And so here I am, in 2020, running against a candidate who's saying there's no jobs and housing. And I was like, well, let's see. The economic development policy that this county's been operating under is yours, Kimosabe, not mine. I said, you just wanted to rezone things and give developers massive windfalls and potential future windfalls. And you never asked kind of like the fundamental questions. And back in the day, and on a good day when Steve Silverman wants to be honest, he would basically tell us, you're stalled in new job growth because you're sitting on 10 million square feet of empty Class A and Class B office space. And it was one of the things that always intrigued me. If you had that much Class A and Class B, and the vacancy persists for more than a decade, then what's wrong here? Why aren't people coming here?
What is your analysis?
It's a couple of things. One is housing follows jobs. Jobs do not follow housing. People don't move to a place, fill up a place, and then jobs come there. Jobs come to a place, and then people say, I want to be close to jobs. So the stall in housing starts with the stall in job creation. So the stall in job creation comes from a couple different things. One big one is transportation. We've got the red line, but the red line is strictly a north-south line. And it was originally designed to take people fleeing the district back to jobs in the district when people thought that's the way it was going to work. It was very federally oriented. So there's no county cross connectivity. There's no adequate transportation. So you're in a place where everybody's forced to get onto main arteries to go anywhere, which makes our main arteries stunningly congested. And if we had been built on a grid, if they continued the DC grid system out of DC into Montgomery County, we'd be in a way different place. We'd have many more opportunities for development. It becomes a problem for neighborhoods because we can't credibly tell people that if we do development here, we're going to be able to provide the infrastructure. And that's a combination of what our tax policy has been and our focus on just building density. I mean, you run into all this opposition, and it's still a top issue for people because they don't believe we're going to build what we say we're going to build. And they're right. We've never built what we said we were going to build. How long has the Purple Line taken? I put bus rapid transit on a map 12 years ago. I don't have a true BRT line running anywhere in the county. We were never able, and that comes down to not being able to fund it. So I'd just say transportation is issue number one. Issue number two is intentionality of what you do to attract businesses. So, Virginia was very, very aggressive, and they had a lot to sell. They had, every Virginia county's got proximity to two airports in the blink of an eye, and Montgomery County suffers in comparison because we have access to no airports in a blink of an eye. I can get to 3 airports in 45 minutes. If you're in Fairfax and Alexandria and Arlington, you can get to 2 airports in a few minutes. And that's a big impediment for the county. You look at where development is in Virginia along 66, and you see this stretch of developments that rival, surpass anything we've got in any urban area, just stretched out along 66 going to Dulles. So that's been a problem for us. And we don't really punch at our weight in terms of life sciences. So we sit as probably number 4 life sciences region in the country. And when you talk to people in life sciences and they tell you that, they went to a conference and people say, where are you? And you'd say life sciences is Shady Grove. Nobody knows what Shady Grove is. Everybody knows about the Triangle. Everybody can talk to you about San Francisco. They can talk to you about what's in Boston, but there's nothing in Montgomery County that triggers a sense of, oh yeah, that's a major hub of research. And so we suffer from that. And then we had problems with people's perceptions about how we handle companies into Montgomery County. How long does it take to get an approval? I was in a meeting with one of the bigger developers in the county, and he's telling us that, he had a friend in Texas, and his friend wanted to, bring a company, and he was looking at Montgomery County, and he consulted with JLL. I don't know if you know who JLL is, Jones Lang LaSalle. They serve both private sector and the public sector in terms of telling the private sector where you can find what you want and telling the public sector what you need to do if you want people to find you. So it's an interesting interface. And they asked them if we wanted to go to Montgomery County and this is what we wanted to build, could we get this done in 2 years? And JLL's response was, we can't promise. In Montgomery County, there's no certainty anything will be done in 2 years. That keeps people away. That's a major factor. You want certainty. So I looked at all that stuff, and also just our regulatory environment and permitting, our policies and procurement don't favor local businesses. And so I made a deal with Sidney Katz when we passed the minimum wage, and I was on the council then. I said, if I get elected, we will take a deep dive into why people tell people not to come to Montgomery County. Why are the business community, why are many of them not our friends in this discussion? Why are they people tell other people to stay away? So Sydney and I did this listening tour. It was solely focused on letting businesses come out and talk to us bluntly. I brought my staff there from different departments so they could hear what the issues were. And then we went about beginning to change the things we do. Big issues in customer service and permitting, changing culture from you submit a plan, we reject it, we tell you, it's not what we need, go back and fix it. Good luck. You come in the second time, good luck. We were not the place that came in and said, well, look, we want to help you get this right the first time, so this is what we're going to do. So we began, we have these pre-meetings now with developers. We tell them what they're going to need to do. If something gets rejected, we tell them what they need to fix and why they need to fix it, so that people can more speedily go through our system. So during all this, the last couple of years, I've dealt with multiple life sciences companies where our people were able to address concerns they had about how long is it going to take us to do this, or should we go to Frederick? And we were able to actually get their stuff done when they needed it. And Marriott was thrilled with the way they were handled by permitting, and they had trepidations about how they would get handled by permitting. So we tried to change one of the root causes of people not coming here, which is having a reputation for being impossible to deal with. I can fix the county. I can't fix park and planning, unfortunately.
Some of the things that you mentioned, for transportation grid, east-west movement, a lot of these things are not new, right? They've been around for decades. They were created decades ago. And you've been on the council for 12 years and now chief executive, county executive for 4. So that's a total of 16 years. Well, 3. Thank you. 15 years. If in 15 years, we can't fix these pre-existing problems, right? What good is this system?
That's a fair question. I think people have been afraid of taxing. You're never going to build the grid here, but you could have built the transportation system here. You could have built a bus rapid transit system here. Bus rapid transit would have connected, because it is based on the origin destination pairs, where people live and where they work. And so it was laid out in the corridors that would have served people from where they live to where they work. It took me forever. This is my idea. This didn't come from any other place than me mapping this out and bringing it to the county executive first, and then bringing it to private sector people, and trying to get people even to embrace the idea of doing this. It finally made its way into county master plan of transportation, but there is no funding for it. And unlike Virginia, because of our tax system, we are not able to raise the money they are. I kept asking people.
But why does Virginia have the money to do it, and why do we not?
It is a fundamental difference in the taxing system. People think Montgomery County is the highest taxes. You hear this crap out there all the time. Montgomery County has the lowest taxes on commercial development of anybody in this region. Anybody in this region. And this is where the rubber hits the road. In Tyson's Corner, Fairfax County's base tax is around $1.15, but if you're developing in Tyson's Corner, your tax is $1.65. It includes 2 special taxing districts to build transportation in Tyson's Corner. There's a taxing district on Route 7, which Virginia put in place. And this is taxing districts are on commercial property to build the infrastructure to develop along Route 7. Potomac Yards has got a taxing district to build the infrastructure. As a vehicle, special taxing districts have one major advantage. The tax is created for infrastructure projects you're going to build. The amount of the tax is meant to pay off the infrastructure project, say, in 20 years. And the tax is applied so that you get a steady flow of revenue from the taxing district over 20 years so you can flow 20-year bonds and pay for this. This is what Virginia does all over the place. And in contrast, and when they did this study for us about positioning us against Virginia, and I talked to Jeff McKay, I talked to Sharon Bulva before Jeff McKay, they all attribute their taxing districts to giving them the flexibility to finance things. You can't build this stuff with cash. So Montgomery County has a lower tax rate. Our tax rate is 99 cents to start with, and we don't have these big special taxing districts. We have impact taxes. And impact taxes sit on the front end of a project. And this does 2 things. Because it's a one-time payment, you can't bond against it. If the impact tax sits at the beginning of a project. So if you were penciling out a project in Montgomery County and Fairfax, land costs are probably comparable, labor costs and construction costs are probably comparable. The back end taxes they don't care about because they're smaller, because they're spread out over 20 years, and most likely the tenants are going to pay them rather than the developer per se. Most developers are out of their projects in a couple of years if they want to flip it over once they've built it. Montgomery County's impact tax, you have to finance it. It winds up in the front end of your project. It increases the cost of your project compared to the same project in Virginia. It requires you to have higher rents or sell at a higher price in order to get a rate of return on investment that you would get in Virginia. So 2 projects, identical, pencil out more expensive in Montgomery County. And that's a problem with your tax structure. It doesn't raise a stream of money that you can use. The amount of money you get isn't enough to do anything with. And it makes the development more expensive to do in Montgomery County. So if a developer says here or there, there's a lot more appealing choice.
But you are the political leadership, Marc. So in 15 years of being there, in recognizing what the problem is, why has not there been any change to the very things you wanted to change?
Because other people don't want to do this. I'm one vote. Remember, I get outvoted all these things in 8-1. There's a reason why I raised issues about the inability to provide infrastructure.
8 other people don't agree. Then there is, we have to look at your argument.
No, why do you have to look at my argument? I look at, if somebody's eating your lunch, you're supposed to look at how they got your lunch. It is the willingness to look. There are people who do not want to raise taxes on developers. There are people who believe that the infrastructure in this county should be paid for by the general population. And that's what's paralyzed us, because nobody would raise taxes on the general public to build what people perceive as infrastructure for developers. And no one's willing to tax the developers to pay for the infrastructure. Those things combine to not being able to build the infrastructure. That's the only reason we haven't gone there.
Well, so we are forever stuck in this.
No.
And where is political leadership on this?
So I spend time, because I've been saying this to people, and I've been comparing Montgomery County's tax rate. And I did this when I was on the council. I was adamant that we were undertaxing compared to everybody else. And I got dismissed routinely. I can't change that because if it doesn't fit other people's narrative, they don't embrace it.
Politics, American politics, democratic politics is about coalition building. It's not about standing all by yourself and pointing your finger at 8 other people.
I didn't point my finger at 8 other people. I said,
but you
this
said
is what
others don't agree with you. The part that I'm missing is, how do you, as a county executive or a county council member before then, over 15 years, build or not build a political coalition behind what you think is the right policy?
Because I can build coalitions on some issues. I built a coalition around minimum wage. I built a coalition around 10 Mile Creek. I've built coalitions over and over again. The hardest place to build a coalition in Montgomery County is when you mess with the developers. When you talk about things that would result in the change in the way you do development, this is where you run into it. And the problem, the thing that frustrates me more than anything is the developers in Montgomery County who complain about Montgomery County go across to Virginia and they pay all these taxes and they do all these things. If you had listened to me over the years on the council, I have said this over and over again. I cannot, you know how campaigns got financed before public financing. I mean, do you realize when I won in 2006, I had like a $65,000 campaign for an at-large race, and the three other at-large winners had over $300,000 in their race? That didn't come from small contributions from people. That came from interests that are very interested in not having to pay for stuff.
Given the way that that Montgomery County is politically structured, we can never hope for change.
Actually, I don't agree with you.
Okay.
When I came in, I started out focused on how to do economic development in the county. And I have I've been able to move the needle on some pretty important things that I think are going to pan out for the county in a really positive way. And at the end of the day, we're going to need the infrastructure to do that. And the beauty of the taxing districts, which is what I didn't understand fully until we did this analysis and JLL talked to us about what the implications were for development, is that this is a situation where the county gets more money, developers pay less money up front, their projects become more feasible. And I've had developers tell me flat out, if you can do this, then more development is going to come back to Montgomery County because you're taking out this impediment to people coming here. Despite my saying this for years, I had no luck getting other people to listen to it. And so I've been really blunt with the folks in the development community. It's like, basically, if you want this change, you're going to have to tell people you want this change because they basically look to you for what kind of tax policy the county should have on development. So I'm going about this in reverse order. I'm working with the development community to try to craft something that works for them the way it works in Virginia, so they can go out and say, this is the thing that'll make Montgomery County, it will make Montgomery County more competitive.
The thing that it seems that Virginia has is some sort of political consensus. And the thing that Montgomery County does not have is political consensus. It is a matter of political leadership to build that political consensus. And I'm not seeing that political leadership building it. You said you moved the needle. Show me how.
I'm kind of baffled by your perception that I have the power to move things if there aren't other people who are willing to move things. Nobody has been able to build a coalition to move anything. The things you bemoan about Montgomery County, nobody has figured out how to do it.
Well, then if nobody can do it, then that's what I said. It seems like we are stuck in this rut forever.
But so this is why I don't accept it. So when I came in, one of the first things I did because I come in right after Amazon doesn't land here. The lesson I took away from that was that this place has value because we were in the running and we outbid Virginia. And the question is, so why did we lose it? Which is an important question. And then, what would you do differently? And now that you know that this spot has been identified as highly desirable, it was highly desirable to Amazon. It wasn't number one. So what do you do to capitalize on it? So I went out and found the developer, a big developer who was interested in doing something in Montgomery County, and he was interested in doing something on a very large piece of property in White Flint. And I asked the owner of it, would you entertain a proposal from somebody? And he said yes. So this developer walked in with site plan and elevations, hired the former developers or the current developers, architect to actually design a plan for the area. And at the end of the day, they didn't wind up taking the deal, but now I had a confirmation that somebody from outside Montgomery County was willing to buy a very large piece of property and make a very large investment. I was working with folks in life sciences, because this truly is Montgomery County's real asset. It is the greatest asset we have. What we took back from the life sciences folks was we needed educational support in Montgomery County, and we needed, we lack a graduate level program of anything in Montgomery County, focused in anything actually. So I did two things. I went to WMATA and I asked them if we could consider a joint development of project on the White Flint Metro that would focus on life sciences. WMATA is going to create a proposal for a joint development agreement. And then I went to the University of Maryland. So over a year ago, we got an agreement from the university system, and they committed themselves in an MOU to start bringing graduate level research and training for the life sciences into Montgomery County. We kept talking, and right before the end of the session, Maryland put forward a proposal to build an artificial intelligence big data center in Montgomery County to train in two fields. One was life sciences and marry artificial intelligence to life sciences, which is increasingly happening, and also to support the hospitality industry. They had been asked by, I think it was Marriott and Choice, if the Maryland University campus in College Park could support some of their interest in what might be done with AI. So they made a proposal for building a facility in Montgomery County in White Flint.
Do you have a timeline?
So they're supposed to get the RFP, or the request for proposals, the solicitation out for master developer, either by the end of the summer or the fall.
All right, let's talk about the other half of this conundrum, which is housing. I mean, we've talked at length now about commercial development, but do you think Montgomery County has a housing problem?
So our housing problem is pretty ugly and pretty straightforward. Between 2000 and about 2018, the county lost another 20,000 affordable housing units. Okay. The total number of MPDUs in Montgomery County, you listen to politicians talk about Montgomery County's national model of affordable inclusionary housing, MPDUs. We have 6,000 MPDUs in Montgomery County. It's a joke. We get 15% at most of the development, unless we've got some special leverage. Like if we're using our property, we can sometimes get better deals. And the typical rate is 12.5% so that's just the loss in housing. Now I've got.
Why have we lost that housing?
The rents went up and people couldn't afford it, and no one will support rent control around here except for me and Will Joando. So we lose it because there's no controls on it. So either the rents go up or it got converted. In the early days, it got converted into condos.
So you are saying that we lost affordable housing units because home values went up and therefore rents went up?
If the market changes and you can get a higher rent, because we don't have a lot of homes. No one's building single family homes in mass because the land for single family homes is gone.
So do you think there's a market failure with respect to housing in Montgomery County?
So nowhere in the country are people building housing for low-income people. Nowhere. And you can't argue that there's not a demand everywhere for low-income people to get affordable, decent housing. No one is building it. This is, in Montgomery County today, I'm leaving aside the 20,000 units that got lost. There are over 20,000 people earning $30,000 a year who cannot find affordable housing. There is a demand for affordable housing. No developer is going to build housing for somebody who can only afford $750 a month.
So do you believe that's a market failure?
I think this whole housing system is a failure.
Okay. If there is a market failure in housing, what is an appropriate government intervention? In Washington, D.C., Mayor Bowser, with 60% of Montgomery County's population, is investing $500 million in housing.
Okay, Mayor Bowser, with 60% of Montgomery County's population, I agree, and a $19 billion budget, is putting in a lot of money into housing. She is also If you look at the data, they just did a report from Hand, did a report. They're the group that is kind of coalesced around what the housing needs are in the region. Their conclusion is housing is being built. It's not being built for the people that need it the most.
So please tell me how, as a county executive, you can make that happen. Because that's a need.
There are a couple of things you could do. One is you need to stabilize prices. You need to have some form of rent stabilization. I would not put it on new construction because we have requirements on new construction. We have housing built before 2005 came with some MPDUs, but the MPDUs expired.
Rent stabilization would you say that is a politically viable position in Montgomery County?
Look, we have it in Tacoma Park. The District of Columbia has it, so it's not like we're alien to it. You have to do it the right way. You can't make it a taking. You have to allow landlords to recover cost increases, even if it exceeds
Which
inflation.
county council member is going to agree with you on that?
Well, right now, I could, Will Juando would agree with me.
That's one.
So what's your point? I mean, is your view that you just surrendered everything?
To set up a goal that is not achievable politically is, I think, beside the point.
Yeah, but it's beside the point if you don't do things that are the only things you can do to actually address the problem.
Well, you could do other things. You talked about zoning. The market won't behave the way you want it to behave. And so there is a market failure. But we can't do anything from the government to intervene in order to fix the problem.
I didn't say that. I actually said rent stabilization is one tool that would fix the problem.
Where is the political coalition for rent stabilization?
Well, look, there's no political coalition for anything that would fix the problem. I mean, this is what baffles me about your approach to this. Nobody has put forward any way of doing anything because it will upset somebody. And so we have a paralysis because people aren't willing to upset somebody. I'm not quite bound by the rule of I won't upset somebody. And I believe there are a lot of people in this community who understand the severity of the problem. And if enough people realize, look, if we don't preserve this existing affordable housing, then this place is going to, it's going to become disintegrated. It's going to reverse the integration that occurred here. People are going to be massively displaced, and we're going to become, whiter, wealthier, but we're not going to become the community that includes everybody. With a different council and not in the middle of an election, I mean, it is really hard to get things done once people start posturing for elections because nobody wants to work with anybody else. And, but I'll give you an example. One of my worst experiences in my first budget, I didn't appropriate $10 million. And I sent it over to the council for them to appropriate, thinking, here's a nice gesture. Instead of me filling up the budget and using every dollar, I'll give you $10 million and you figure out where you want to put it. I did that thinking people would be happy. And what I get criticized is, you didn't fund this and you didn't fund that. And it's like, well, that's kind of why you got the $10 million is for you to go ahead and say, look what we did. We took the lead and we funded these things. It can be really hard working with people sometimes who really don't want to work with you.
We keep electing leaders who can't develop coalitions, who can't bring about consensus. And so we just are in this rut that sometimes seems that we can't get out of.
I think there's enough public goodwill to create a consensus in the public that we need a more radical approach to affordable housing. What we're doing now will never get us there. And my goal right now is to demonstrate to people that absent a change in what we're doing, we are not going to solve this problem, and we're going to be in deep crisis in terms of housing. And I find that resonates with people. And I will tell you, people like somebody actually being honest with them, pretending that everything's okay and that everything works. I think people kind of know everything doesn't work. And the pandemic sure as hell has demonstrated that everything doesn't work. So I find a lot of acceptance for my willingness to go out there and talk about things we need to do that don't fit inside the box. And I do think if you build a community consensus, you can create a political consensus. We did it on 10 Mile Creek. We did it on the first minimum wage. I did it on the second minimum wage. A whole bunch of things I've done over the years where I went out and worked with the community to build the consensus that it takes to move the political wheels. And that's what I'm focused on. If you rely on one person negotiating with 9 people, they don't have a lot of incentive to change what they do. If you can create a sense in the community that you need bolder action and you need to do things differently, politicians will go where the people lead. And my goal is to help build a consensus in the community to do more.
Marc Elrich, thank you for coming on I Hate Politics. Good luck in the campaign.
Thank you.
That was Marc Elrich from Montgomery County Executive. You can find out more about him at marcelrich.org, and you can follow him on Twitter at Marc_Elrich. That's all for this episode. Music for this episode comes from DC-based singer-songwriter Emily Hall. I hope you'll listen, like, and share the show as we bring you stories about politics close to you and to your home. See you next time.
I've witnessed deep suffering, felt so numb, I just wanna stand still. But I practice my will, let it move, just let it move on through. In the power of expression we find the connection to live our truth. I've been trying to learn how to face the sadness. I've been trying to learn how to feel this grief. From moments of love to moments of loneliness, I surrender in gratitude for